Okay, so think about this for a second. There's a really good chance that the glasses you're wearing or the sunglasses sitting in your car were all made by just one company. A single gigantic entity that controls everything from Ray-Ban and Oakley to the eyewear for Chanel and Prada. This is the wild story of the man behind it all, Leonardo Del Vecchio, a guy who went from an orphanage to building an empire that literally dictates what millions of us see through every single day.
So that brings us to the big question, right? How in the world did a factory worker, an orphan with absolutely nothing, manage to build a global monopoly in the eyewear industry? Well, the answer is a fascinating mix of brilliant strategy, obsession with control, and a deep, burning desire to never, ever be dependent on anyone else again.
To really get the empire, you first have to understand the man. And his story, it doesn't start in some fancy business school or a cushy office. It starts in a place of serious hardship, a place that would shape the mindset behind his entire business philosophy. I mean, just look at the timeline of his early life. It's pretty stark. He was born in 1935, but his father died before he was even born. By age 7, his mother couldn't support him, so she had to send him to an orphanage. And by the time he was 14, he was already working as a factory apprentice, just to survive. This wasn't just a tough childhood. It was a foundation built on pure instability. And it taught him he had to rely on himself. And this right here, this is the most crucial part of his origin story. That experience, that feeling of being totally dependent on others, it lit a fire in him. It became the psychological engine for his whole life. It forged this absolute, lifelong intolerance for depending on anyone or anything for his survival. Remember that idea, because honestly, it explains every single move he makes from here on out.
So after the orphanage, he goes to work. But a moment was coming, a pretty traumatic one, that would shift him from just being a laborer into a strategic thinker who was obsessed with being in control.
His first real gig was as a tool and die maker. Now, this isn't just some random job on an assembly line. This is a highly skilled craft. He was learning how to make the super precise tools that make other metal parts. He was learning the language of manufacturing, of metallurgy, of design, right from the ground up. This deep technical knowledge, it would become his superpower. And then something pretty horrific happened. He lost part of his finger in a machine. Now, you'd think that would scare him away from factories for good, right? But for Del Vecchio, it did the exact opposite. The accident actually deepened his fascination with the machines. It cemented his goal to completely understand and, more importantly, control the entire production process. It was a bizarre but powerful catalyst.
Okay, this is where the whole story pivots. Del Vecchio takes his hard-earned skills and that obsession with control, and he starts his own company, building a business machine unlike anything the industry had ever seen. So, in 1961, at just 25 years old, he moves to this little town called Agordo, where the government was giving out land and loans to new businesses. He starts a small workshop and calls it Luxottica. But at first, he's just making tiny metal parts for other, bigger eyewear companies. He was just a supplier, totally dependent on his clients. And you can just imagine him in that workshop absolutely hating that he was at the mercy of his clients' orders. He knew his power was limited as long as he was just one little link in a very long chain. So he asked himself this game-changing question. What if I didn't just make the parts? What if I controlled everything? And that one simple question led to his entire playbook. He decided he was going to take over the whole process. Step 1, design the frames himself. Step 2, manufacture everything in his own factories. Step 3, stop making parts for other people and start owning the brands outright. And then, the final masterstroke, control the very stores where the glasses are sold to the customer. Now, this whole strategy has a name. It's called vertical integration. It just means that a single company owns every single piece of the pie, from a sketch on a napkin all the way to the credit card swipe at the register. For Del Vecchio, this wasn't just a business strategy, it was his weapon.
So with this powerful new playbook, he set out to basically conquer the entire eyewear industry, piece by piece. Let's look at how he did it.
The perfect example of his strategy in action is Ray-Ban. When Luxottica bought the brand, it was a dying American icon. Seriously, they were selling for cheap in gas stations. So what did Del Vecchio do? He pulled them from thousands of stores, massively improved the quality, jacked up the price, and then used his control to place them only in high-end shops. It was proof that owning the brand and the shelf it sits on gives you all the power.
But he didn't stop there. He made another move that was just pure genius. He went to the biggest fashion houses in the world. We're talking Chanel, Prada, Armani. And he cut deals to design and manufacture all of their eyewear. With that one move, he almost single-handedly transformed glasses from being just a medical device into a high-profit, must-have fashion accessory.
So, after all that, what did all this strategy actually build? Well, the scale of Luxottica today it's almost hard to comprehend. This is the house that Del Vecchio's absolute hatred of dependency built. His final, ultimate move for total control came in 2018. He merged Luxottica, the king of frames, with Essilor, the world's biggest maker of lenses. So now the company didn't just control the frame on your face, but the actual glass you look through. And just like that, EssilorLuxottica became the most dominant eyewear company in history, period.
I mean, how big are we talking? Well, the company owns over 18,000 retail stores. So next time you walk into a LensCrafters or a Sunglass Hut, just remember, you're walking into a store owned by the same company that makes almost all the brands on the wall. And the whole operation employs over 190,000 people across the entire globe. It's just a mind-bogglingly huge operation, and it all started with one guy in a tiny workshop in Italy. And if you want to boil his entire life philosophy down to one sentence, this quote is it. Ownership, not contracts, was the ultimate source of power. You see, for the boy who grew up with nothing in that orphanage, owning everything was the only way he could guarantee he'd never, ever have to depend on anyone else again. So what are the big takeaways from this incredible story? Well, for one, we see how intense hardship can create incredible strategic focus. We learn that when you pair real technical skill with a big, bold business vision, you create something powerful. And maybe most importantly, we see that vertical integration, controlling everything, can be the ultimate weapon to completely dominate a market. And that kind of leaves us with one final thought. I mean, it's an incredibly inspiring story about a self-made man who built an empire from absolutely nothing. But it also raises a pretty important question for all of us. When one company has this much control over an entire global industry, who really holds the power in the end? The business or the customer?